this opportunity. I'm energized to talk to you about Latino entrepreneurship. And Mara and team, thank you for this wonderful convening. Because I feel like we're not in a room of talkers, but in a room of walkers. And that's very critical during this stage. So we have 20 minutes to get on a really energized discussion about entrepreneurship and where it fits into this roadmap. So what we'd like to do is frame and set the tone with the fundamental base layer of where we are with the state of Latino entrepreneurship. And then we're going to get into a segment of solutions. And that's why we have my peer here who should be at this seat talking about some solutions that we've created together and some on the horizon. Then we're going to talk about connecting the dots, which is what this whole forum is about. And then we're going to conclude with some takeaways. So it's going to be a quick 20 minutes. I'd just like to set a quick frame on the state of Latino entrepreneurship. And let me say, it wouldn't be possible without the lead researcher from the Stanford Latino Entrepreneurship Initiative, Marlene Orozco, sitting right there. And Ileana Perez, who's with us in spirit. But the research states, and it's reinforced through our research that is in existence, called the State of Latino Entrepreneurship. I'll mention it several times, hoping that you will Google and download and share the report. But we all know that Latino and Latina startups are outpacing the general market, on average 2 to 3x the last 10 to 15 years. Done, given. On the flip side, only 2 to 3% of our Latino and Latina entrepreneurial ecosystem across the United States is scaled. And we define that as over $1 million of annual gross revenues. So let me repeat that stat. Only 2 to 3% of our Latinx entrepreneurial ecosystem across the United States is scaled. Over $1 million of annual gross revenues. That's a big problem. We call it an American economic imperative, that we move the needle forward. And so anyhow, you've heard about our education platform where we attract and recruit those top 2 to 3%ers to come and do a scaling course at Stanford. Over the course of the last 3 years, we've graduated 432 entrepreneurs from that program, responsible for over $1.5 billion of annual gross revenues to the American GDP. And so there's a tie into workforce development because these folks, our brothers and sisters, are creating American jobs. In fact, those 432 responsible for over 20,000 jobs, and that number is increasing. So think about our program. By 2022, we'll have over 1,000 graduates, and going forward to 2040, 2050, those numbers are absolutely outstanding and extraordinary. So just to paint the picture overall, and Abigail, so this happened. The unleash.
Actually, here, I can do you one.
All right, in color.
This happened.
That's right. This happened. The unleashing of Latino-owned businesses, business potential. This convening that Mara was talking about. So I'm going to hinge on the word unleash because that word really talks about something being existing and really liberating it from restraint. So can you tell me more about this convening and how it's more of a solution-based type of atmosphere rather than us reiterating information?
Sure. First of all, thank you, Mara, and the whole team of organizers who made this possible. I'm thrilled to be here. It's actually a bit of a homecoming for me. So I did fly all the way from Washington, D.C., but I lived in San Francisco on Potrero Hill from age 9 to 15. So this really is a homecoming, passing the airport. I saw my old neighborhood right above the Mission District. So it's extra special to be back here with you today. And thank you, Mark. It's a delight to see you again. Mark, as Mara said, was there, not just there, was a partner of ours in carrying out what we call the Latino Business Forum. We gathered because we were really concerned about the reality and the potential, and I'll get to your unleashing in a second. As you said, there's 4 million Latino business owners. As the white population is in decline and white business owners are retiring, they're not replacing themselves. And who is replacing those new businesses? It's people of color. It's more than any other group, it's Latinos. And within that group, more than any other group, it's Latinas.
That's right.
So let's hear it for the Latinas. So, yay, that's all great news. But our businesses are the smallest, the most likely to go out of business, the most undercapitalized, the least likely to get outside capital. So there's all of these challenges. These are not Latino challenges. These are America's challenges. If we believe that Main Street is a driver of employment and small business is a driver of employment, you need our businesses to scale. And so we convened around that critical challenge with the goal of both highlighting the top challenges to address, because there's many, but also with a real focus on driving to solutions. So that was how we convened. Also, our manner of convening is a little unique in that we don't like to work in silos. So we brought Latinos and non-Latinos together, and we brought people across sector. We brought practitioners. We brought intermediary organizations. We brought funders of various different types so that everyone would have a voice, and we'd be able to come up with what we think are the best solutions that are cross-cutting solutions. And so the point is that we want to unleash the potential because Latinos are already there, driving the new business, but they're held back by barriers. And we identified two different kinds of barriers that some are internal to the business. So it's the lack of access to capital, it's lack of access to procurement opportunities, and it's the business know-how. But we really did focus on that scaling piece because there's lots of organizations working, micro enterprises and the Acción Internationals. We didn't want to repeat. We really wanted to focus on this scaling, and that's why LBAM was such a great partner for us. And then there's this external piece, and I think that's what's really unique about this convening is we got into what are the outside forces that impact Latino business? It's not just the business and how the business is run and what we have and we don't have and resources. It's the water we swim in, as some of the participants said. It's the world in which we operate. And those are the things like institutional racism and biases that impact how we can move forward. It's the prevailing narrative about what a Latino business is that rarely pictures, a tech company or a high growth company or a sophisticated company. We love them, but we're not all taco trucks, and we're not all, in construction and in gardening. Those are all great, important things, but that's not all that's there. And so we wanted to talk about how do we change that narrative so that we can be seen for the true potential that we have. And you know from your work that there are plenty of companies out there, and we had folks who had scaled their companies, folks who went public and sold their companies for millions and millions of dollars, who were with us talking about how that happened and the obstacles and the challenges that they faced along the process. And then the other main challenge in that ecosystem sphere was just access to networks, the power networks that give you the opportunities and access to mentors. So those were the challenges.
So let's hone in on the access to capital piece, because I feel that we can talk about that for days, right? But what are we actually doing about it? And so one of the things I find extraordinary, and you can find this in our research, is that scaled firms, Latino and Latina scaled firms relative to unscaled firms, so those that are under $1 million, they have relatively more success with capital. But overall, our subgroup is the less capitalized. And so what we've done at LBAN is make sure that our graduates of the scaling program have access to a capital provider network. So that it comes down to your honing in on networks, right? So not only traditional banking sources and debt sources of capital, but alternative financing options like VC, angel, family office, and crowdfunding. So I think we have to water this capital desert. So can you talk about some of the folks that you had in the room who are actually managing funds and how we're taking this portion forward? Because I know that we just talked yesterday about how I'm just delighted as well to be in this room and to be with two national organizations that are thinking about this. But what we do on our end is we are seeking automation opportunities so that we can provide not only a pipeline for our graduates, but an ecosystem for our alumni that is in perpetuity, right? That's automated, that's a marketplace, so that we can re-engage the folks that come through our partnerships and then align them with possibly some think tank opportunities and execution items that you've put forth. So anything along those lines that's been happening since our convening?
Sure. So the capital piece was definitely the most complex part of the conversation. One of the big challenges is what I call the missing middle. And so the lack of that growth stage capital, so you can kind of get the $1,000 loan, the $5,000 loan, and then there's this big gap, and then if you're already super successful, then you can get the $1 million loan. But what happens in the middle? And CDFIs are such an important segment, but they're massively undercapitalized. And so there is much more demand than there is supply. So one of the key recommendations that came out of this, this convening was to urge an increase in funding of CDFI funds to the organizations that are out there giving the loans. Another recommendation is when a loan is declined, creating a referral system. So if you go to a traditional bank and you don't get the loan, a lot of Latino-owned businesses will just give up or use their own credit cards or miss out on that potential growth capital. So it's then referring them to the community organization, the CDFI organization that can help them get that funding. Key critical challenge, I think most of us in this room probably know about it, is the credit scores. We've got to get Latino credit scores up. And so the other one was the use of alternative data, paying bills, all that host of things to build a credit history so that our Latino-owned businesses can get access to the bank loans or to the other loans. And then the final point is just a diversity of capital at different times. So the growth stage is a huge challenge, but you might start needing a CDFI, then move on to a bank loan, but then maybe you need equity or venture capital or angel investing. And so those are all some things out there. And then of course, here we are in, in San Francisco. There's a great opportunity with fintech to make loans a lot more affordable. There's also a great risk with predatory lending, and so we need to get this field regulated, but we think that there's some great potential there.
And thank you for that, because I think that we created a capital continuum that's very, very important at the beginning of this stage of capital access and throughout the life of the business, even along the lines of a potential exit. One of the forum participants, who's also a graduate of our scaling program, Maria Rios, she's the first Latina in the waste management industry in the history of the United States. What comes to bear is the lessons that she has, not only for her peer alumni, but those who are unskilled. She says, know your bankers before you need the money. I think that's a really important concept, and it hones back to this connect the dots that we're trying to create here in terms of the fundamentals of preparation for capital access, but also accessing networks. The other thing that I find really revealing is alumni of our program recall that they're the top 3 percenters in terms of revenue generation in the entire United States. They're coming to me and saying, my gosh, we're not finding any success with VCs or angels or family offices, so we're going to go do a GoFundMe or Kickstarter campaign. So if they're having issues, the top 2 to 3 percenters, think about the 98% that are unscaled. So I think what we were doing here was also, we're not policy hogs in terms of the work that we do at SLAY or LBAN, but we want to advocate for policy. And also policy when it comes to the financial services sector. I want to pivot a little bit, and can I get a time check here? So I want to make sure we stay on time. Okay, great.
Ooh.
I know, right?
In 7 minutes or 7 minutes left?
Left, okay. So let's shift on. Let's shift to another.
I'm just going to speed up the rate at which I speak.
We're going to start really revving up here. But let's shift to this concept of connecting the dots, right?
Yeah.
And I know some of the work that you do, I think you're going to just be such an expert in this topic. But we talked at length about our entrepreneurial class of Latinos and Latinas becoming business owners. And not only business owners, but business leaders. And not just top Latino or Latina leaders, but top business leaders, meaning they should be serving potentially on school boards and become city council people and future mayors. Can you tell us how this important aspect of leadership and going and permeating into the boundary of philanthropy, how this class of entrepreneurs is really a future
I should
model.
ask you to do that. That's your big thing. But I'm happy. I'm gonna use it to tie in since we're running out of time. I'm gonna use this to tie in. So in our network thing, in the ecosystems in which businesses operate, this issue of power and influence, I think, is huge. It permeates everything and everywhere. We are not in the places we need to be able to exert the influence that's needed to ensure that there are good policies for everything that Myra's and this whole group is talking about, actually, whether it's education, whether it's entrepreneurship, whatever. We need to be at the decision-making tables. So that is why we need to get out there to, part of our program is also on civic engagement. We need to be advocating on behalf. We need to get on those boards. It's not enough to just do that, though. Very often we get there, we're the only one there, we're afraid to ask. No, we have to bring others along with us. So we need to create a movement that is supporting and investing in Latino business growth, but then using the wealth that's created to bring others along, to invest, and also to, the philanthropy piece. I don't want to let, I don't want to let off the hook the big philanthropic organizations from investing by saying, oh, it's okay, we're just going to do it ourselves. No, we have to do it ourselves, and we have to demand more than that 1%.
That's right.
But to do that, we have to be at the table. So
right.
Let's figure out how we get more program officers at the major foundations at the same time that we're building our wealth.
In decision-making capacities.
That's right.
So let's move on to
the
takeaways here, because we have a couple of things that we're still need to talk about and shine the spotlight on. So one takeaway that, from my perspective is procurement opportunities. So these companies becoming certified to be eligible for big contracts, both at the governmental spectrum and also the corporate spectrum. So one big problem that I see and that we've talked about that we want to create actionable solutions to is our millennial entrepreneurs. They're getting disinterested in the concept of becoming certified because it is a very rigorous and document-rich process.
Yeah.
And so if we don't level the playing field with these procurement opportunities that are at the city level, at the community college level, and I've been on both sides of the aisle. What I'm trying to say is, can we make this more appealing to the millennials and also support the procurement providers? Because we should get to a happy medium. Because we're talking about billions of dollars.
That's a really good point, and I don't think it's just the millennials who are frustrated. I think everybody is frustrated. It's onerous. There are different requirements for local, state, federal. We've got to streamline the process. I like to use a model that recently came out of the last administration. They're working on a one application for college for first-time college goers so that you're not filling out 8, 10 different applications with different essay questions. There's no need. It's a disincentive to first-time college goers. So I want to apply the same kind of process. I want a movement for one procurement form that anyone, especially new business owners of color, can use to become certified.
Fantastic. And we understand that there's, it takes both sides, right? So we want to be an agent for change in that. I have one more takeaway, and then I'm going to shut up and listen to you.
No,
but
please.
Share the research. I'm tired of hearing that we have a deficiency of research when it comes to Latino and Latina business owners across the United States. Each one of you will get one of these forms I'm holding here, which is an invitation to the release of the State of Latino Entrepreneurship, the freshest research on January 25th at the Stanford Graduate School of Business. We want all of you to be there, and we want you to bring 3 people because we need to have 600 people at that event. Why wouldn't you be there? The research is there for all of us. Other takeaways, Abigail.
Okay. So I want to just re-emphasize that the ecosystem matters. We have to work on changing the narrative. There's a lot being left off the table. If Latino-owned businesses made what brought in revenue, what white-owned businesses bring in, we would have $1.38 trillion more dollars added to our economy. So as you said, this is a national imperative. We have to look at the waters that these businesses are swimming in. We have to change the narrative about what Latino-owned businesses look like so that the gatekeepers will understand us and invite us in. And so it's a two-way street. On one side, we need more of us as gatekeepers. On the other side, we need those ones that are there today to understand the true potential of what we have to offer. So the ecosystem and the narrative change, building wealth and power.
And that's great. And we're out of time, but just remember this. If U.S. Latinos constituted a country, we'd have the 7th largest GDP in the entire world. So this is just not a feel-good mission. It makes good business and economic sense. Thank you for providing a very energizing conversation.
That's great. Thank you. Excellent.